Now let's ask the Secretary to invite the government officials to come in. Now we've got the appointed time. I formed a quorum, and let's call the meeting to order. And Mr. Fernando Zheng has written in to say that he would withdraw from this meeting. Now it's about the project scope and cost and Three-runway, including the cost control and the reclamation works.
Okay,
Welcome, government officials and also colleagues from the AA Hong Kong for attending today's meeting. First of all, I would now like to ask the Undersecretary to speak on the 3RS project. Yes. And then I will ask Mr. Fred Lam to say something. Good morning, Chairman. Thank you for allowing me some time to give a brief introduction. Today, we have asked the CEO of AA and his colleagues to come and brief us on the 3RS, the project scope and the cost. The details to be given. The paper has been circulated to members, and you can take reference from that. The paper says that under the APCO of THB, we will monitor the works, and we would be suggesting to engage a consultant to assist in the monitoring and verification of the works. Now, I would like to defer to Mr. Fred Lam to take us through the 3RS project. Mr. Fred Lam, CEO of AAHK, please. For 3RS and the design and the costs. We've been working on it for the past 2 to 3 years. Now I will defer to the Mr. Calvin Poole to take us through the project scope and also the cost. Mr. Poole, please.
It's my delight to take you through this morning the scope of the project and covering cost and also the management process that we will be using. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the airport site itself. Our 2 runways, 1.5.
Colleagues, can you switch on the mic for Mr. Poole, please? Yes, okay. All right, okay. Hey.
Move closer. Members, I'm sure, we're very familiar with the airport site itself. We have 2 runways, north and south, separated by roughly 1.5 kilometres. Between them is our iconic Terminal 1 building you'll see on the right-hand side of the slide. And also between the runways, you'll see the I concourse there, which is the midfield concourse, which will be open very shortly. The capacity of the airport is reaching such that we need another runway. But the project is of course very much more than just a runway. We have to reclaim further land of some 650 hectares. On that land, we will be building a third parallel runway, which will become the new north runway. The existing northern runway will become a new central runway. We have taxiways connecting through back to the original airport. Between the 2 runways, we have a third runway concourse, the building which will be where we get on and off the planes, of course, and where we wait for those planes. That will be the crucial element for customer treatment. Also, in red there on purple on the right of Terminal 1, adjacent to Terminal 1, we have to expand Terminal 2 into a full processing terminal that will serve that third runway concourse. And it will be connected via an APM system and a baggage handling system to the third runway concourse. I'd like to take you through each of those elements just a little bit more detail now. The reclamation, to form 650 hectares of reclamation, we've taken the view that we're not going to, for environmental reasons, we are not going to be dredging. So this reclamation will all be done on top of the existing marine muds that exist there. We've carried out extensive site investigations such that we know the depths and the type of muds we've got there. We have an added complication in the area that we also have the footprint. About 40% of the footprint overlies the existing contaminated mud pits which were established at the beginning of the 90s. Not connected with the airport, but they have materials in them that are potentially hazardous to the environment. So our reclamation is basically, there's three main elements to form that land. What we have to do is, first of all, ground improvement to the muds that will underlie the land. We have to build seawall right the way around the outside, some 13 kilometres of seawall, and then the filling operation in two main elements, both marine environment, and then once we get above the sea level there's a significant land-based fill material. The fill material will largely be done by sand, but once we get above ground we'll be also using public fill where we can. Just a bit more on the different colours on that diagram there. We show the different types of ground treatment that are necessary. In areas where there's the contaminated mud pits, the area shown pink, we will be carrying out a technique called deep cement mixing. This is where we mix cement with the marine mud and thereby solidify it and make it a load-bearing platform that can take the load of the reclamation. In areas outside that, we'll be using a number of methods, including prefabricated vertical drains, the PVD, whereby you encourage the marine muds to settle, to sink quickly, and to do this you have to allow the water to come out of within the muds. And for the seawall there'll be a variety of construction techniques using both DCM and also stone columns to provide a very stable foundation to those seawalls. Once formed on that land, we will then be providing taxiway and runways. As I've already mentioned, the new runway will be parallel, some more than 1.5 kilometres apart from the current north runway. It will have dual taxiways to the south of it, and also on that diagram you'll see we're providing dual taxiways to the north of what will now be the centre runway. There's a number of works we need to do to the existing runway, so there's a period where we actually have to open the new runway and close the old north runway, the centre runway, to reconstruct that. We have to put tunnels underneath the runway, but also we need to materially change it so that it can work and efficient, and also build wraparound taxiways around each end of the runway to allow the maximum effective use of that runway in the future. The runway and taxiway systems will all be designed to international ICAO standards. These are the standards that govern all airfield design. So between the new runway and the centre runway will be the third runway concourse. This is a large concourse building, some 283,000 square metres. It will have, with its aprons and the contact stands, some 57 positions. 34 of those will be contact stands where you get on and off the aircraft straight into the building. As you can see there, Code F, Code E, it will be catering with the maximum flexibility to allow different size of aircraft with the forecast mix that we anticipate, and it will be able to accommodate right up to the very largest aircraft, the Code F, which is the A380. Obviously, it's very much got to be customer focused in terms of ease of use, and so we've used as a base our iconic Terminal 1 building, which is very successful, but learning from the very experience we've had in operating this, we believe this concourse will be even better. It has the same aesthetic as perhaps as T1, although not a copy. The intention is to get much light into it to make it a very nice, pleasant, ambient space for people to use, to really drive customer experience for the travelling passengers. And there'll be a number of innovative features in the building that we hope will make it a very, very green building indeed. This is another view, although titled Commercial Node. This is the node of the Y shape of the terminal concourse. Although obviously it will be a feature of it to have commercial and F&B facilities there, The reason also to show it is this will be where you arrive, having come off the APM into the third runway concourse as a departing passenger. And again, you'll see the intention is to make the building intuitively wayfinding, such that you can easily find your way around the building in the same manner that you do in the current Terminal 1. As I mentioned, the concourse is obviously between the runways, but the processing terminal will be remote from it, adjacent to Terminal 1. And it means that we've got to take the decision to expand significantly the existing Terminal 2. Terminal 2 was built some years ago before the third runway was envisaged. And is really only a fairly modest departure-only facility and relying back onto Terminal 1 for its concourse. So the Terminal 2, the expanded Terminal 2, will be very much a much bigger building. You can see the dotted red line is the envelope of the current T2. And the intention is to expand that building and at the same time retain as much of that building as we can to enable, but always realizing that we want to make this as the most efficient processing terminal we can. So it will very much mirror the experience that we have today in Terminal 1 in terms of efficiency. There you can see in blue, you can see the size of the building. It's more than twice the size in terms of floor plate area, in terms of total square meters. We also have two buildings, North Annex and South Building, adjacent to it. These will provide many of the facilities necessary, such as car parks, pick-up, limousine lounges, car parking for the whole airport and facility. The Terminal 2, as I say, is going to be a full processing terminal. So unlike the terminal today, it will have a full arrivals level. It will also have the meets and greeters, the baggage carousels, all of the facilities that have to be added to make it a full processing terminal. In addition to that, we also need to greatly expand the APM system to connect seamlessly between T1 and also the new third runway concourse from T2. So underground, we will also be building what we call the airport interchange station. This is an APM train interchange underneath the building, which will allow us to connect to the existing T1 line and also provide a very efficient APM service out to the new concourse. We also have to build a depot there, and as you can see, a large part of the facility is a baggage handling basement. This is obviously a very major baggage handling system has to be provided for the new expanded facility. And of course, the existing T2 doesn't have that, and we're careful to add that basement. Although it is a basement, it's not going to be beneath the existing Terminal 2. So that APM system that will connect to the third runway concourse, you see it in diagram form here. The station distance is roughly 2.6 kilometres, and the headway of the trains, 4-car trains initially, will be about 2.5 minutes. And similarly, the actual journey time will be just a little over 2.5 minutes. That's very similar to the journey time from currently you'll see in T1 the APM system runs, you're familiar I'm sure, with East Hall to West Hall, EH and WH, and at the end of this year that system will be extended out to the midfield concourse. A very similar journey time for someone in T1 going out to the midfield concourse will be similar to the journey from T2 to the third runway concourse. We are not bound by the existing train system, so the advantage is that we'll be able to use faster trains and slightly larger trains to provide that service. There's also, because it's a must-ride system, we need a high level of redundancy on the system. So in the existing system in T1 runs on what we call a pinch loop, where the train goes one way and then turns and goes back the other way. We will do the same system on the TRC line, but we will provide a third running tunnel that can allow us, if there's a problem in one, we can immediately switch to enable that high level of redundancy that's necessary for the train to continue running from TRC to T2. And in the future, we're even protecting for a further fourth in the event that there's a decision to expand the third runway concourse at some point in the future. The other key element, of course, in terms of, apart from getting passengers there, we need to get their baggage. So the baggage handling system will use the latest technology, an individual carrier system. This is an ICS system. This is different from the existing system we have in T1, which is very close underneath the processing terminal. This one has to travel a distance, so it's a very different philosophy. It travels 5 times faster than our baggage system, and will enable us to still deliver the bags to meet the current KPIs that we enjoy with T1, even though the extended distance. It will also allow us to have a very efficient system for delivering bags for arriving planes and different from the T1 system we enjoy today. So on the layout of the reclamation, you'll see there's two blue areas, east and west, of the main facilities. These are much needed aviation support facilities, the eastern support area and the western support area. Characteristically, the eastern support area is a mixture of airside facilities, ground support equipment and the like, but also landside facilities that will have a police station, fire station and other facilities. The western support area is more predominantly aviation support. It will have facilities for maintenance, aircraft maintenance, as well as another fire station for the new third runway. Construction cost. I'd like to just take a little bit of time over this slide. I'm sure since March when we presented it, the figures that we presented for the construction of the third runway concourse is $141.5 billion in money of the day. This is the familiar number. This is recognizing that the money won't all be spent in one day. It will be spent over a period of 8 years of construction. That is the cost of the project, and that is how projects are always presented in terms of money of the day, money of when it will be spent. Back when we did the master plan estimate in 2030, we presented two figures. A figure that was current for one day only in 2010, and then added the money of the day, turned it into a money of the day figure. So those two figures there you can see are 86.2 and 136. The only reason that we presented again this 84.5 in the red box there is simply for transparency, so that we can to refer back members to compare with what we said in the master plan to what we have now presented. So the figure at master plan for the money of the day was 136.2, and the figure today is 141.2. A slight increase, but a very slight increase, I think you'll agree. But both of those figures are money of the day. That's the money when it will be spent. So just to focus on that, the breakdown of that money of the day, you won't be surprised to see that land formation and marine works is the highest single item under that estimate of 56.2. Very briefly, I can split that into as the main constituents. I've said before, we have ground improvement, which is a very substantial element, which represents a very significant commitment from the airport authority to treat this ground, to not dredge any material for the reclamation, and to make sure that we trap and deal with the contaminated mud in a very responsible way. The fill management, that's the cost of forming the land, including importing all of the sand and placing the materials. And then there are a number of utility diversions under that. So that all adds up to the 56.2. The next item is the runway and airfield facilities, 11.5 billion. Again, a breakdown of those figures in terms of runway, taxiway and taxi lanes is 5.2 billion. The airfield support areas, all the infrastructure needed for those is 1.7, and then there's an airside road network of 4.6. This includes the two tunnels beneath the current north runway, the future centre runway. You'll see then apron works below that of 5 billion. This is the work of the actual flat aprons around the third runway concourse. The Terminal 2 modification works, I'll break that down, the 16.5 billion money of the day. We are retaining much of Terminal 2, all of the foundations, all of the substructures, the APM basement structure as well, but we are significantly expanding the building. So there will be a much bigger footprint plate, and there are significant basements associated with the baggage handling and the new APM system. So those come to 5.7 billion. The architectural works and works of the fit out of the Terminal 2, the much larger building, is 4.2, and E&M services and systems is 6.6. I would also add that with Terminal 2 we will be retaining many of the E&M systems that are in the building today. We will have to increase the size of them obviously, but many of the chiller plants etc. will be reused. The last of the elements I'll break down is the third runway concourse. Again, another very significant item, $26.3 billion. The foundation structures and the main structure of the building is some $12 billion. The architectural fit-out works, 4.5, and the APM system works, 6.5. These are all consistent with the numbers in the back of the paper. Other than that, we have the APM system of $10.9 billion. That is obviously, again, another significant commitment, but it is a must-ride system, and so there's a significant level of redundancy in that system to make sure that it is always working. A baggage handling system, again, it has to travel a fair distance and also be extremely robust and reliable. And then the further item is the airport support facilities and utilities. These are the general civil works associated with the main building. So that's the breakdown of the total cost of 141.5. Just to close, just to cover on in terms of our own experience, since airport opening, the Airport Authority has invested some $30 billion in capital expenditure, and over 20 billion of that in large projects that have been run by its own in-house management professionals, a mixture of engineers, architects and system specialists, all with a knowledge of the airport, many of whom worked on the original airport construction. And so they're acutely aware, they understand the challenges of constructing in an airport operating environment. And of course, we have established project management processes and procedures that were based on the original airport construction and have been honed in the years since. In looking at the management structure, we have a variety of management processes, either which could be loosely looked at in terms of a hierarchical type system or a matrix type project management system. The hierarchical system is very good for certain projects, but it does mean that some data, common data such as cost and program, are filtered up through the various levels of the organisation. For that reason, we're proposing to use a matrix system whereby certain functional procedures such as cost, program and quality are taken aside and have separate functional heads within a project management office. And then the project delivery team are focusing on the actual construction management. This simplifies the reporting on certain critical items such as cost and program, and makes sure that there's clear transparency at the top as to where at any one point. This is particularly relevant to a project that has many different types of construction, civil, building, systems, and so it really does lend itself to the various different project management packages that will be there. So this is the project management structure for the Airport Authority. As you can see there on the left, the project delivery team, their focus is to manage the construction and delivery with the contractor. The project management office contains certain functional key leaders who have staff matrixed into the project delivery team, but who report to them on certain functions such as cost, budget, quality, safety and environment, to ensure compliance across all of the projects consistently. Also within the Airport Authority, we have a very healthy oversight structure. This is the structure for the third runway already in operation. Although its basis of having a committee within the board that looks at construction is long established. So within the management team, the CEO has a management coordination meeting on a very regular basis with the EDs and also the project team, looking at progress and monitoring the project itself. Additionally, there's a steering group chaired by our chairman, again that involves all of the executive directors, to ensure the proper reporting and transparency of the process of the project. And again, beneath the board, we have a committee, the 3RS and Works Committee. Long established as the Works Committee, it now also functions to manage and review the progress and costs associated with the third runway. In addition, of course, we have a committee on audit, committee and finance, which has a separate role under our board structure. And of course, I would add at the working level, we enjoy a very good relationship in terms of coordination with the Airport Expansion Coordination Office. We constantly liaise with them and report to them on progress and matters that related to the project. Just a few slides to finish, Chairman. Thank you. Obviously, we are now in the detailed design stage, and we've started that, but this comes at the end of a long process whereby we've been planning for this since master plan. Since that period, we've done a number of advanced elements, including those we've taken a very comprehensive site investigation of the area. The area where the reclamation will be is unconstrained in terms of our access to it. We've done a lot of marine site investigation, and that diagram just shows you some of it, in terms of making sure that we fully understand the material that we will be forming the land over. Equally, we have very detailed records of the actual land that formed the Chek Kok airport, and so equally the Terminal 2 expansion has access to all of that data. Also, things that we've been doing in the last year and coming to a head is obviously we've developed a project master program. That was part of three elements in terms of a very comprehensive exercise assisted by international consultants to look at the procurement strategy and risk assessment along with the project master program, so they're all integrated. That risk assessment is just the first start of a risk assessment. We now have turned that into a risk management plan, and that is something that's a dynamic tool that will go forward in the project where we monitor risks that were identified now, we add to them, but more importantly we use it to avoid risks, and if there are risks that are coming up, that we can use mitigate and have contingent actions in the event that they occur. The project budget estimate I've already talked through was prepared by an independent consultant, reviewed by my own team, but also was vetted by the government-appointed M&V consultant. And the project budget includes an appropriate level of contingency. So we're into the design stage at the moment. We're lucky that we had a scheme design in parallel with the IA process, which finished last year. In parallel with that, we means by doing a scheme design, we've got a very, very detailed scope of what the project is, and so it's fully developed exactly what the scope of the project is. We have peer review and design constructability by independent experts at appropriate times. We have a very experienced client which we use to also interrogate the designers to make sure that the design is delivering genuine operational need, and of course that leads towards a cost effectiveness of the facilities that we're planning. The design process is a constant process of designing. We look at value engineering all the time, and we're particularly key to make sure that the project is fit for purpose but also value for money and avoids any extravagant or unnecessary features. Design freeze is something that will happen during the project. As the project is completed, when we get to a detailed design stage, we sign off that process and thereby try and avoid any creeping design changes once we start construction, and thereby avoid the risk of cost escalation during construction. Thank you very much, Chairman, members.
好啊，局長有冇嘢補充添？
Undersecretary, do you have anything to add on top of that? Now, 9 members have already raised their hand, or a rather total of 10 members, including the Vice Chairman, 11 altogether would like to ask a question. 4 minutes each for each member, please. Kwok Ka-ki, Leung Kai-chung, Lee Shuk-yen, Albert Chen, Low Wai Kwok, Tony Che, Yu Si-wing, Sin Chung Kai, Wu Chi-wai, and the Vice Chairman. And also Mr. Alberto. Dr. Kwok Ka-ki first. Thank you, Chairman. 4 minutes. I would like to thank the team from the HKAA for coming here. You said repeatedly that there will be stringent cost control measures. We've had that kind of remark so many times here at LegCo. Just now at the PWSC Public Works Subcommittee meeting, in relation to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, there is a cost overrun of 15%. Yesterday, the XRL cost overrun of 30%. Liantang boundary control point in less than 2 years, cost overrun of 50%. Now you talk about a cost of $1.5 billion. Now, up to today, the HKAA has spent $30 billion. Now, the budget is several times of the total expenditure of the AA. Now, we are concerned about the airspace and the air war issues. We don't have any papers yet on those issues. Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, say, for example, the maximum capacity is 160,000 trips. But then now it's just 40,000 trips, only a quarter of the projection. The CEO, well, it's not your money. You are not talking about your money. But for the contractors, I mean, it's big profit for them. We're talking about $1.5 billion. Now, if we talk about a cost of around 30%, then it means $180 billion. And then if we go by the experience of Liantang, then that means $214 billion in total. How can we trust your projection? You said that you would implement cost controls. I think you are just cheating us, cheating the taxpayers. Well, if you are in a commercial organization, the chief executive would have been fired because of all these wrong estimates. These are the 3 white elephant projects. Now, total over cost run will amount to $169 billion. There has been overestimation of the usage. Now, Undersecretary, I would like to ask you, there aren't sufficient construction workers, there aren't sufficient construction materials, there is no airspace agreement, and the statutory processes have not been completed yet. Why do you want to get the endorsement from the electrical now, and then you want to sign off the agreement next year? Well, there is no return once the agreement is signed. It's just like the MTRCL now. It doesn't have to bear any responsibility. It says that its cost will be capped, and then, well, later on, maybe the airport authority will say the same, and accusing or alleging the government has made the wrong estimation. It's not the AA's responsibility. So, I would like to move a motion today that, in view of the shortage of manpower, shortage of materials, there is a worry that these projects will not be completed, and Hong Kong taxpayers will suffer as a result, will pour money into the drain. Undersecretary, you have 25 seconds to answer that question. Chairman, for the international airport, it's very important that we build a 3rd runway, because in the next couple of years, we would reach our maximum capacity. If we don't proceed with the 3RS as soon as possible, then, then it doesn't work. Well, we're talking about a construction period of 8 years. And during that period of 8 years, there may be changes in the labor market and also the material market. We may not be seeing the peak that we are seeing today. So I think we should proceed with the 3RS ASAP. Mr. Kenneth Leung. Chairman, reclamation project makes up an important part of the system. You're talking about an area of 650 hectares. There have been technical problems in relation to the reclamation work of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, so much so that the bridge cannot be completed at all. Now, Mr. Poole talked about the pink part in the slide, and there are contaminants, and there are the CMP there. So you have to adopt the non-dredging deep cement mixing method. Now, technically speaking, for this deep cement mixing method, are there any examples which have failed internationally? Because this is the first time that DCM is used in Hong Kong. If you can't guarantee that this reclamation method works, then there will be big contamination problem as a result of your reclamation. I have another question about the slide on the new concourse. This is a single-wide building. There is a land indeed for a double-wide design. Is it because you want to cut the costs? That's why that you opt for a single-wide design system instead of a double-wide system. Do you plan to save costs? Undersecretary, can I defer to the colleagues from AA to take these 2 questions? Perhaps I'll answer the second question. I'll ask Mr. Poole to talk about the DCM technique. This is a single-wide design for the concourse. In the past couple of years, after we've come up with the design scheme, and in the 2030 master plan, we said that after the expansion, we would have an additional 30 million MPPAs. So that can be done with the single-wide design for the concourse. So there's no need for us to resort to a double-wide design. Of course, we have a space reserved here, and if needed in the future, an additional wide design concourse can be built in to bring in an additional 20 million MPPAs. But we don't want to proceed now because there may be over capacity if we do it now. Now, also, in 10 years down the road, there may be changes in the passenger demand and also techniques and so on. So if we can make a decision on the second phase, then that's more appropriate. I'll now defer to Mr. Poole to take the question on DCM.
Thank you. On DCM, you're correct. It hasn't been used in Hong Kong before. It has been used very widely in Asia and Europe and also America. It is an established technique. In fact, because it hasn't been used in Hong Kong before, we actually have done a number of trials. The first trial was done a few years ago where we brought a Japanese particular rig in to make sure it could be done in Hong Kong conditions, but also looking to make sure it's environmentally acceptable. And we did a lot of monitoring to make sure that it achieves that. In the last year, we've done a further trial, which has been comprised of 3 elements, where we've looked at all the techniques that are available, basically a European technique, a Japanese technique, and a Korean technique. And we've done those trials to ensure and to get good engineering data from those processes. In terms of the scope around the world, they've been used for very many years. There are 68 major DCM works that have been conducted in Asia in that time, in the last 10 years. And many of them have been conducted from a marine environment. I myself have visited both Korea and Japan with my team to look at live projects going on there. In fact, they've recently in Korea they've been doing a number of significant projects.
Lý Trạc Yan.
Mr. Lee Chak-yan, once bitten, twice shy, as the saying goes, but then the government is not shy, despite that it has been bitten many times, because the money is not their money. There's been so much cost overrun in the many projects. It's staggering. MTRCL cost overrun in the XRL. Cost overrun for $20 billion. Well, ultimately, it's taxpayers' money. It's not the MTRCL's money. Now, the HKA is wholly owned by the government, so there's no dividend, and the taxpayers are already losing money already. So if there is ultimately a cost overrun, I don't know what will happen. If we're talking about $1.5 billion. What is your estimate of a possible cost overrun? What is your estimate, AA? Well, no matter what estimate you come up with, you have nothing to do with it because ultimately it will be the taxpayers and the passengers who will be paying out the money. You can be as irresponsible as you can. I'm very worried. Over $140 billion. Now, can I refer you to a report here? After you've read this report, what have you done? The HSBC has done a risk assessment. Financial advisor final report. That's what it's called. And it says that there are 5 risks. Well, let me high-level design.
Approval, preliminary quote, risk.
There are 5 risk areas, and the conclusion is that the HSBC suggests there is a CAPEX stress. CAPEX is stressed. And then there will be a 20% overrun in the cost. So I don't know what you make of this report. Have you considered all these risk areas? Some $56 billion will be used for reclamation. There are several parts to the reclamation. Well, the machineries are important, the materials are important, and then the costs for the machinery and the materials will soar because various jurisdictions are competing to get such materials. What is your estimate of the cost of the sand as a fill material? Would the costs rise up? Will the cost of machinery rise up? Will you be in a situation where you will come back to us saying that costs have risen and then you have to ask for extra money? So how do you face all these risk factors? Mr. Lam, please. we understand fully that the community is very concerned about possible cost overrun for major projects. At the board and the management level, we are, well, as concerned as you are, and we'll try to minimize the risk of possible project cost overrun. For this estimate that we have come up with, we've gone through the vetting by several strata of consultants, and we think this is a reasonable estimate. But what we need to do is that at the early stage, we must do the best job in risk control and management. And also during the construction stage, we must also be exercising stringent risk control, and we'll try to minimize the risk as much as we can. Mr. Albert Chan, well, you haven't given him the time to answer. Mr. Albert Chan, I don't expect some good answers from them. But I would like to have some reports. When the Chatlakop airport was built, these reports were made open. These include the financial report on the airport. I'm sure that the AA has done a detailed financial report, and also the project report. We know that the parking stands and the concourse have been substantially changed. When the design was first mapped out in 2010, we were talking about 80 to 90 parking positions. Why has there been a substantial cut? And also for the sand as a fill material. When Chatlakop was built, they did have a plan of where the sand came from, including cyclone, outlying islands, and they have all the figures, including the volume, how many tons, and etc. But we don't have such information now. Where did the fill materials come from? And the cost estimated is also very important. So you can give us a report for us to look at, then you don't have to say so much here at the meeting.
4年代啊，啲報告都公開，我睇唔到家啲報告可唔可以公開咯？咁就係咯，即係希望同埋嗰個乘客嘅估計啦。即係我知道機管局以前做咗啲研究，估計個乘客量係幾多，咁啊呢幾年其實有改變嘅，啊同你嘅預計有改變嘅，咁呢啲資料都重要噶嘛。你起好嗰陣時，其實即係你8年後起好，其實個機場已經即係按你嘅預計，其實已經飽和噶啦，係嘛？即係你起好啊，要再起啊已經，啊不如唔好起。係嘛？咁所以呢啲資料我覺得係重要咯。可唔可以公開呢啲資料俾我哋睇咧？
我話總裁。
Make the information public. That is the point. Even at the colonial era, it was made public. Mr. Fred Lam. In the 2030 information, according to my information, for 2013, it was not 80-something. The parking berths is more or less the same as before. I do not know whether you had another report, how many reports there were. Perhaps before 2030 there was another report. No, for the Master Plan 2030, it was in preparation for the third runway. There was only one such report, and that is the reason why Mr. Paul had done the comparison between the two. That is, at 2030, the proposal and the costs that we came up with, how is it different from what we're coming up with now? Of course, there had been some optimizations, there had been some changes. However, the main facilities are the same. Now, I think sand costs is very important. Where are you getting the sand? From Hong Kong, from somewhere else, and the transport fee? And at the time, we had information concerning the dredging of sand from Cyclone, etc., and we saw the cost, and this is major cost for the construction of the runway. Yes, indeed, we will have to import the sea sand. Probably we'll have to import from the Pearl River Delta. Yes, indeed, we have put that into our cost as well for the purchasing of sand. How much is it per metric ton, please? How much is it per metric ton for sand? I do not have that information with me now. But at the time of purchase, we would have included the inflation element as well. Can you give us the information after the meeting? And when, Mr. Chair, will the report be made open? I think they can go back and look at it and come back to us as soon as possible. Lower Kwok. Thank you, Mr. Chair. At present, it is true that there are a number of public projects which are at the peak of the construction phase. And definitely there had been, for a number of factors and reasons, including political, JR, etc., the projects have been clashing together in terms of timing. For Hong Kong's sustainable development, some of the infrastructural projects will have to be underway. And the third runway construction project indeed needs a lot of the early phases of work to be conducted now. It will not be the case where the peak of construction will be tomorrow. So we do not have to be over-concerned about that. Now, I'm asking about the man-made island reclamation for the Guangzhou-Zhuhai-Hong Kong bridge. I know that it is a non-dredging method that's being used, and basically there is a compression with steel pipes to surround the area, and also with these underwater piling. The objective issue is settlement. That is to say, we cannot control as much as we want to the degree of settlement given this kind of compression construction method without dredging. So my question, that is a DCM, I would like to find out more about this man-made island for the bridge. Now, to take this opportunity. And also we're looking at PPT3 there. There have to be some ground improvement, and some of the superstructure will have to be of some height. I do not know whether that will affect the flight path and therefore affect the progress. Mr. Poole?
Thank you. In terms of the construction, as I've said, the pink area there is deep cement mixing. The settlement, because we're mixing cement within that area, the ground improvement for that area means that there'll be very little settlement in the actual marine muds itself. We actually turn them into an engineering material. In the other areas, we will control settlement by conducting, as I say, the process of getting the water out of the mud is the key process. So what we do is we put in sand drains into that area, and then we drain it by putting a surcharge of up to 10 metres high above that material to settle it much quicker. The intention of all the ground improvement is to make sure that all of the big settlements, the primary settlements, occur during the construction phase before we start constructing the facilities on the top. So the techniques are all around accelerating that process such that we then have a stable basis on which to then build the subsequent infrastructure on top.
有冇跟進啊，羅偉國議員？
嗰啲高限嗰啲唔會影響個。
And what about the height restriction? Will that affect the progress of the project, please?
Yeah, no, we've already taken measures with CAD to make sure that the plant that needs to operate in the area for the DCM and the land formation areas can all work within the height restriction area. You'll see two areas at the yellow at the either end on the right and left extreme. That we've got low headroom DCM. This is a technique where actually there is plant that actually can operate even under the height restrictions in those areas. So no, it won't be a constraint on the construction.
好啊。我或者話俾同事聽，我就問完第一輪呢，我就會處理郭家麒嘅動議先，好嘛？
Now, we need to deal with Mr. Kwok K's motion at this point. But before that, we will have one more. I have another question. Kwok Chi-chin? Yes, this is an unprecedentedly large, costly public works project. at 141 billion, and we have seen major public projects over cost and over time completion situation. Now, given this major XRL over cost and overrun, I would like to know what are the arrangements for the third runway to avoid the situation that we have seen for the XRL? That's the first question. Mr. Chair, Mr. Dare talked about the third runway project and by the AAHK that is undertaken by the AAHK, and that is not to be compared with the MTRC constructing the XRL. Of course, the AAHK is using its own financing, its own funding to construct the third runway. Of course, it may go for debt financing, etc., and it will use its own means to control its costs, its progress of construction, and at the same time, we have also set up a coordinating office to supervise the relevant works, and also that the AAHK will have to comply with other legal requirements of the Hong Kong government. And at the same time, we also have a consultant for supervision and certification to help with the work of the coordinating office. Now, as for how the AAHK best utilize its funding and accepts the monitoring and supervision of the market, because as it raises debt, it will have to be subjected to market scrutiny as well. And they, of course, have their own project supervision at their level, AHK. Now, if we are not satisfied, and we are not satisfied with the projects, with the construction and the way they handle it, so we reserve the right. Hold on, Mr. Chairman, I want to, because I still have another question, because the AAHK had already given us information concerning the project supervision and the progress, but it's not from the government. The government has not given us such information. Can I ask the Secretary whether he can provide us with such information? And also for the extension for the number 2 terminal, I'm looking at the figures. I want to clarify the figures. Now, it is 300,000 square meters. Does that include the north and the south terminals? I think, well, Mr. Secretary, yes, we can provide the T2 extension. That is the numbers or the figures after T2 extension. Or anybody from AHK would answer that question? Mr. Poole?
And the 300,000 square meters is the modified of the T2 area. The north and south annex buildings separate from that will be a further 100,000 square meters.
So in
total it is 400,000 square meters, I believe. Your time is up. The next question. Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm looking at the hierarchy chart. It seems to be very tight-knit and it's very clear, but I worry, given the size of this project and the different phases and links are so closely linked, I do not know whether if there is a breakdown, whether there will be major delays in the project. We would want the third runway to be able to be completed in time, that is by 2023. I would like to know how this can be ascertained. That is, given the very fine division of labor, that each part will have its own clear terms of reference, and if there is any shortfall in the work, that there will be a recourse And also I know that for planes which need to berth and also stay in Hong Kong for a few nights, it is refused because we simply do not have the space. Will there be limitations to the number of nights, overnight stay of the planes? For some of the long-haul planes, of course, they cannot leave Hong Kong right away. So what is the situation there? And also for the pier, for the Sky Pier, I do not know whether there will be extension plans for the Sky Pier. The CEO, please. As mentioned, because this is a project that is interlinked in its different areas and phases, that is why we believe the communication part is very important. If there should be any problems with the project or progress of the project, we want to be able to be informed of this as soon as possible at the management level. Of course, there will be many problems with a project of this size. The important point is not to say that we do not have problems, but to come up with timely solutions for the problems. So it is not the construction team providing us with information and communication one way, but rather we also have teams that will early on seek out the problems and also come up with the solutions. Now, if there is any imperfections in terms of the work and the professional team, but I am confident as to their capabilities in completing the project in a satisfactory manner. As for your last question concerning the overnight stay of the planes, this exactly has to do with the capacity and extension of capacity of the airport, and we are proactively adding berths, including short-haul and long-haul for short-haul and long-haul planes. And in the future, we would want to have more space for the planes which need to park and stay. Last question about Sky Pier.
Right now, we don't have any plan to expand the Sky Pier facilities. We believe that Sky Pier, as it is now, has a capacity which can cope with passenger demand. And also, because as we all know, in the EIA report, there has been a restrictive clause which sets out the maximum number of vessels which can use the Sky Pier. So even if we expand it, then there doesn't serve any purpose. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, let me first deal with the reports first. I know that the AHK has its own dedicated website on 3RS, and on that website, I've also been able to retrieve some financial assessment reports. Mr. Albert Chan asked for the financial situation report. Is it the case that apart from the financial report on the website, you still have other financial reports which have not been uploaded onto the website? The latest financial report is that done by HSBC in 2011, dated 31st of May. Apart from that report, is there any other report? Now, if according to that particular report, I have these questions. The report says that on page 19, that the IRR is just 3%. And the last sentence is this. The negative net value and IRR leads to the conclusion that the 3RS does generate a commercial rate of return on a standalone basis and would only be justifiable for the government if the 3RS delivers a substantial economic benefits to Hong Kong in addition to the financial return for AA. I don't know whether I understand it correctly. According to the HSBC report, the IRR is 3%, and the financial effectiveness is not that good. 3RS may bring economic benefits to Hong Kong as a whole, of course, and that will do good to Hong Kong as a whole. The same report also mentions about the future passenger traffic, the projected increase in the number of passengers. If there is any mistake in the projection, then there will be heavier or bigger financial risk. And of course, members have also mentioned about the construction costs and the risk associated. So my question is, apart from this report, do you have any other report? And also, in terms of financial efficiency, it doesn't seem to work. But then if we talk about economic benefits to Hong Kong as a whole, are you doing a report on that? Well, that's a separate matter. Mr. Lam. Well, Mr. Sin referred to some old reports. That was done in 2011 when we did the Master Plan 2030, and that was a preliminary assessment. But in the past several years, we've made some updates, including this year. We've come up with a financial report, also done by HSBC. I'm more than happy to share that with you. That has not been uploaded, right? No, not yet. So, Chairman, I hope that they can give us the latest financial assessment so that we don't have to refer to the old reports. Perhaps in the next meeting, when we discuss the financial arrangement for the project, we can discuss that. If you are interested, we can provide you with the report earlier than that. Well, any follow-up question? Well, he hasn't answered my question yet. For AHK, is the report being the initiative of AHK, or is the government, is the government asking you to do the 3RS, or is it your own initiative that you want to proceed with 3RS? Now, for us, the latest projection for the IRR will be different from that in the report you referred to. When we give you the report, then we can have further discussions on this. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps we've been looking at the old reports and there hasn't been so updated. So this is not good for our discussion. Perhaps maybe what I'm now going to quote may come from some old reports. This is the only information that we have on hand. Now, we would be using DCM in reclamation, and for this particular technique, according to the report, its impact on the water quality has not been certified. Well, you may have done some trials, but if it is used in large scale, we don't have any information certifying that it is workable. So would the use of DCM affect how you implement the clauses in the EIA study, and that will also have an impact on your cost? I'm sure the AAHK must explain on this. Now, for Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, because of the technique used in reclamation, it attracts criticisms because it runs against the conditions set out in the EIA report. And in reclamation project, what is most important is the procurement of sand. And as we understand it, for the man-made island for Hong Kong-Macau Macau Bridge, sand is a factor which affects the progress of that bridge. Now, for 3RS, it is a scale much larger than the man-made island on the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. It may be 4 to 5 times more sand needed. Can you secure the source of sand? If you can't secure the source of sand, what contingency plans do you have? Will these contingency plans drive up further the project costs? For such project estimates, what I usually see is that delay recovery measures will be implemented. But then the cost of these measures will not be included in the project estimate. So what is the relationship of these the cost of these delay recovery measures and the project estimates? Can you do a better job in monitoring the cost for these delay recovery measures? And also, according to AAHK, the 3RS is really must be proceeded with urgently. Would you be doing works 24 hours around the day? Would it be that the baseline is that there will be 24-hour operation in the construction works, and you would deploy manpower and machinery accordingly? I think you should further elaborate on that. Would you be able to procure so much equipment and employ so many workers in the market, or else you will be repeating the mistake made by MTRCL, saying that they couldn't get sufficient machinery, sufficient workers, hence there is a delay. So I want these questions to be answered. Mr. Lam, you have 30 seconds to answer his questions. DCM is approved by the EDP. So the EIA report, the DCM is specified as the reclamation method. So we've been concerned about whether this is a feasible technique. So we've done several trials, and we're very satisfied with the results of the trial. And we think that this technique works and can also satisfy the EBD's requirements. Second, on the source of sand, we've been liaising actively with the mainland authorities on import of sand. I think the progress has been satisfactory so far. The last question is on the project estimate. Contingencies have been built into it. We don't want to use it, of course, but we think that the project estimate and the contingency therein is reasonable.
It states that the method that will be used is the non-dredge reclamation method, which is what now you say will be used as part of the reclamation. And I see that in paragraph 9, for example, of the electrical paper, one of the methods is the deep cement mixing, right? So I just want to confirm that the deep cement mixing is part of the non-dredge reclamation method that is mentioned in the EI report. That's number one. Number two, in paragraph 9 of the paper, you mentioned that there's been a series of trials that has been conducted by your engineers to ensure that the deep cement mixing method, which is a new method, is workable. So can you give us the complete reports and tests of that trials that you've conducted to show us that this method, the deep cement mixing method, is indeed workable, and it is not going to be a repeat of what the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge has experienced in their reclamation problems? So that's my first question.
Mr. Poo.
Okay, certainly. In terms of, I can confirm very, very clearly that DCM it was included in the analysis on the EIA, and it is a non-dredge method, absolutely. The first trial that we did was, in fact, during the EIA to establish, and it was monitored by EPD as well, to make sure that we can show that it works without impacting on the environment as a non-dredge method. And so those trials were done in the EIA, and those reports I'm sure could be available. The current trials we've done this year are more on the engineering side, but again we've taken the opportunity to do extensive environmental monitoring to show that in a bigger scale that the process is still acceptable under the EIA.
I think those are the reports which a lot of the NGOs are interested in. Mm-hmm. The recent trials and tests which you've done mm-hmm. for the DCM. Can you give us those reports? On
the recent trials, the trials have just concluded, so we haven't yet finished all of the final analysis of the report. Once those reports are finished, we'll be make available, yes.
Okay. 我第二個問題呢，就係我想問呢
The second question is on the HSBC report, which was done in 2011, as you said, but some members have asked there should be a revised edition of that report. You should have brought it along with you to this meeting, because it is exactly the issue that we're discussing today. And that is where is financially feasible, where there will be losses incurred. Why don't you bring this report today? Well, let me remind the Vice Chairman that in the next meeting we'll discuss the financial aspect. But for our discussion today, we still need that piece of information. we can provide the information or the report to you after the meeting. Well, we originally thought that the financial arrangement would be discussed in the next meeting, but since members are so interested, we would provide it to you ASAP. So we are done with the first round of questioning. As I said, I would be dealing with Dr. Kwokyaki's motion. So, Dr. Kwokya, I'll give you 2 minutes to speak on your motion. Well, from what we've heard so far, I think the government or the AHK has not responded to the most salient points, and that is how to ensure that there will not be any cost overrun for the project and mistakes like the SRL and Hong Kong-Macau Bridge will not be repeated. So this is all empty promises. Well, every time when they come to us, they will say that, hey, they have so many stringent monitoring measures in place and so on. But what we are seeing here today is that there has been delay of Hong Kong-Macau Bridge, and for XRL just yesterday, there's been it suggests that there is a cost overrun of $20 billion. And these projects, these White Elephant projects, are still ongoing, not yet completed. I think you are doing something superfluous or unnecessary. There are statutory procedures to be completed. There are discussions that have to be held on air war, and also we haven't got detailed information on the financial arrangement. And I think the the Undersecretary has been irresponsible in his remarks. AHK is wholly owned by the government. When the CEO was hired, he was asked to take on this responsibility. All the money of the AHK is in fact taxpayers' money. If you are going to take out a loan, then taxpayers are asked to pay the loan. And the dividends of AHK should actually be given back to the Treasury. Well, how come that AHK was established in the first place? I think the government is very irresponsible. I'm not saying that you should not build the 3RS, but at least at this stage, where there are so many ambiguities or unclear points, you should not be proceeding with your 3RS. Mr. Albert Chan, 1 minute. If you can recall that when we built the old Port Airport, there were stringent monitoring and vetting processes. But in the current discussion, I think the discussions are not thorough enough. Well, before all the uncertainties are clarified, you are jumping the gun in proceeding with various preparatory works already. I think you are being very irresponsible. The government should stop all its work now until the day when we've got all the reports, the financial viability and so on, and before we can confirm that you can go ahead at this subcommittee, you should not be going ahead. I think the government is very irresponsible. On the question of Chinese white dolphins, well, we're just left with one Chinese white dolphin.
Lee Cheuk-yan. Mr. Chair, I think that's their stance. They're saying we're doing it with or without you. The money is not yours. It's 140-something billion. That's actually a staggering sum unto itself. You can think of it. The XRL is 80 billion, and this third runway is 140-something billion, even without cost overrun. And this is all taxpayers' money. And if there is no resolution, such as no resolution to the airspace issue, then it will still be a completely useless facility. It's much like the co-location for XRL customs. It would be useless if that cannot be resolved. So that is throwing taxpayers' money into the salty sea, especially if they think that they do not have to come to the LegCo to seek funding. I think Mr. Kwok's, my colleague's motion points out something that is very important, that there are a number of huge public projects that are in progress in Hong Kong, and the government at every time, every turn had been saying because of lack of materials, labor shortage, there's been cost overrun and completion overrun. And we do not want to see this in the third runway project. And the government should closely supervise the situation so as to avoid the situation, because we can see that there are possibilities of overrun of costs given the tight labor market. And at the end of the day, it is just adding to the already severe burden of the people of Hong Kong, the taxpayers. So before the third runway project commences, if we can optimize it and adjust it, the cost, that would be best. Now, Mr. Chair, Mr. Shan, Mr. Chair, it says that for the XRL, there will be a special dividend paid to the government, and the government will provide that extra funding to the XRL for cost overrun. So that's left pocket transferring money to the right pocket. But that is not the case for the third runway. There is no special dividend to be paid to the government to be invested into the third runway. Chair Nampak. For the major public projects in Hong Kong, for each and every one of them, of course, there is a completion date. For the 2 rail links in the Hong Kong Island, they will be completed, and then the Kwun Tong line as well. I'd like to know whether the government can do some estimates as to the labor for such major projects. That is to say, for the runway, if we can coordinate the commencement of project, then we can avoid major peaks and troughs of employment, so that not a lot of construction workers will be out of work at the completion of the major projects. So there will have to be some ramp up before a major project can commence. So I think we can do some planning in terms of labor. Mr. Tin, I am a member of the Commission for the Poor, and we will have a Commission of Poverty, and we will have a report coming out soon. In the future, it is not true that our money can last forever to support our social services. What we need to support the payout for social services is infrastructure, is the economy. We have been going round and round and round delaying major infrastructure projects. If you want our economic viability to be enhanced, if you want our competitiveness to be enhanced, there can be no social welfare. And I do not know how this whole situation can continue. I will be speaking on that as well in the future. Yu Shiwing. Mr. Yu. Mr. Chair, I see that Beijing, Pearl River Delta, they're all talking about the third or the fourth runway, actually. We're still debating about the third runway. Even completion at 2013 is late. If we delay it again this time, I can tell you, for logistics and tourism in Hong Kong, they simply cannot be viable. So I would want you to think about it from the economics point of view, from the industry's point of view, tourism point of view. So I do not agree to the motion. Mr. Chairman, I'm a member of the AAHK. I declare my interest. Now, for the logistics industry concerning the third runway, we believe it is very important that we have this. Apart from the financial system, what is most competitive for Hong Kong is our airport. If it cannot maintain its position as a leading airport, then it will adversely affect in major ways logistics and tourism and other industries in Hong Kong. I object to the motion. Mr. Chair, I object to the motion as well because the runway had gone through rounds of consultation, rounds of verification, and there had been also a lot of EIA studies, and it's been passed, and also there are certain measures put in to alleviate any pressure presented to the environment. Now, I have heard views saying the peak of the major public projects, but we have new information to show that for some of the projects, commencement in Hong Kong are going to be later. And the engineers that I myself meet with also are of the same view. So I do not want to see this project further delayed. Mr. Chair, of course, I and my colleagues are concerned about the costs and the time control for the third runway project and whether the money's been well used, especially in view of some major infrastructural projects. They all have cost overrun and the time overrun. So the question was, what is the role of the government? And the Mr. Yao's Secretary Mr. Yao's answer was very disappointing. His answer was basically very irresponsible. He's saying, oh, just rely on the AA. That's what he's saying. But in fact, the third runway is very important for Hong Kong. It has long-term impact for Hong Kong in the positive sense. So I am not in support of the motion. Mr. Chair, I declare interest. I'm a member of the AA. I also object to the Mr. Kwok's motion. He, together with a group of people, are always complaining that we do not have frequent enough planes, and also complaining about not enough berthing for planes visiting Hong Kong, etc., etc. But this is not anybody wants to see. But do we do nothing about it? We, of course, should come up with solutions for it. And that is the only way that we can do any good for Hong Kong. You talk about materials, sea sand. Sand, of course, is getting more and more expensive. There's more and more demand for sea sand. If you delay it any further, I do not know whether there will be any sea sand available. So I'm not in support of the motion. Mr. Wong? Mr. Chair, Hong Kong has lost its position in terms of container terminal and sea freight. What's left is but air. And if we do not build the third runway, we will lose that position as well. So I am absolutely in support of building the third runway right away. Mr. Chair, Hong Kong, as an international financial center, if we cannot provide the support in air transport, how can we claim to be an international center? How can we host international conventions? I think the third runway is of utmost urgency. I would want to see commencement of work as soon as possible. Mr. Chair, I think for the third runway, it is something that all Hong Kong people want to see commence. So I am absolutely in opposition of Mr. Kwok's motion. The direction is right. If there are problems, we solve them. Mr. Chair, In terms of environmental protection, in terms of projects and works, I'm sure colleagues will have a lot of questions to ask, but we cannot say it is because of material shortage, of labor shortage, we stopped the project for that reason. I oppose the motion. Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair, Shek. Mr. Chair, Mr. Kwok has his angle, and it's a selective angle, but we have no choice for the third runway because this is for the survival of Hong Kong. I would like to see Mr. Kwok retracting his motion. This is for the survival of Hong Kong that we need the third runway. Mr. Chair, I understand Mr. Kwok's angle. What he's saying that there's a shortage of materials, shortage of labor, but when we see problems, we try to solve them rather than to go roundabout and avoid it. Otherwise, Hong Kong will not progress. So the government and also the AAHK should come up with possible proposals and for solutions. And we, as members of the LegCo, will review them, look at them to see whether they are reasonable. If they're not reasonable, we can change them. This is the first real substantive meeting of this committee, Mr. Chair. If we stop the project at our first meeting, that is not the pragmatic way forward. So I oppose the motion. This is already the third meeting, actually. Mr. Kwok, you want to speak? 1 minute. Mr. Chair, I heard my colleagues. I hope that this can be duly recorded for posterity, because we are not only committing a mistake once, but many times over. The government had not thought about these projects thoroughly. I'm not saying in my motion that we should not build the third runway. There are a number of issues which have not been resolved. It is very clear that for some of the projects which have been signed, contracted, and are being claimed, we do not know what to do with those. The contractors in their contract, of course, have enshrined the claims terms. Isn't that the same for the bridge, the Guangzhou-Shenzhen Hong Kong bridge? We are settling claims, and that's taxpayers' money. We're paying every day. So without proper supervision, I don't think that is right. But I want to put forward this motion for the benefit of Hong Kong's people's interests.
Would those in favor of Mr. Kwok's motion raise their hand? Dr. Kwok claims a division. The division bout will reign for 5 minutes.
本人動議鑑於現時
I move that as there have been delays of ongoing major infrastructure projects in Hong Kong because of manpower and material shortage and other technical problems, especially that the administration has admitted that there has been a delay in the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau bridge project. I move that before we can confirm that there are sufficient manpower and construction materials, we would postpone the 3RS project to prevent driving up construction prices and causing further delays on the various projects, adding extra financial burden to Hong Kong people. Those who are in favor of Dr. Kwok Kai-kai's motion, please raise your hand. Dr. Kwok Kai-kai, Albert Chan, Lee Chak-yen, Wu Chi-wai, and the Vice Chairman. Those against, please raise your hand. Tony Chair, Wang Ting-kwang, Christopher Chung, Lo Wai Kwok, Frankie Yik, Jeffrey Lam, Abraham Sheck, Elizabeth Quat. On this side, Michael Tian, Chen Kim Po, Stephen Ho, Martin Liao, Yu Si Wing, Chen Han Pen. Thirteen against, 5 are in support. So the motion is negatived. So next, Mr. Michael Tan has raised his hand to ask a question. 4 minutes for you, please. He is in the first round. Mr. Michael Tan, I have a question for the Undersecretary. You said that you would monitor the 3RS project. I'm sure that you believe that people will make comparison between your project and the XRL. The APCO of THP has 11 colleagues working there, and there are 2 consultancies. And then under Highways Department, Railway Developments, there are 17 staff members and 1 consultant. And the director of Highway said openly or publicly that they've only got 10 or so staff members under the Railway Division, whereas the MTRCL has a staff of over several hundred. So the Highways Department depends very much on the MTRCL to give reports. So it can be seen that the Highways Department doesn't have manpower to do an internal independent supervision, and it relies very much on the MTRCL. Now, the consultant of the MTRCL was here, and it pocketed 85 million for it to supervise MTRCL and advise on Highways Department. But then, as we've questioned further, the consultant was saying that he only responded to questions raised by the government. They are not doing anything proactive. And I asked him, the consultant for that particular project, is it your responsibility to ensure that the project will be completed on time and there is no cost overrun? And the consultant said, yes, this is what I understand to be my work responsibility. Then I followed up with a question. Did you attend meetings between the MTRCL and the government? And the consultant said no, because I was not invited by the government to attend those meetings. But I asked him whether you insisted that you would attend the meetings between the government and the MTRCL. If you are not there at the meetings, how would you ensure that you will help supervise the project? And the consultant said to us, gave an interesting answer. He said that he could not recall whether he had attended such meetings. So I think we are seeing a repetition here today. They've got 17 staff members. You've got 11 staff members, 6 fewer. But then you've got an extra consultant company. You've got 2 instead of 1. So for these 2 consulting companies, how would you plan that you would use them? Would you be telling them categorically that just don't act, or on your questioning them? The 2 consultant companies should be asked to be more proactive. You should write that in your contracts with them, saying that if they spot anything irregular, it is their responsibility to remind you to resolve the problems ASAP, or else you will have a sort of penalty system if they are not doing that. And if they are not doing their job, then you can cut the cost or cut the contract amount. So that's my first question. Would you write into the agreement such clauses so that next time when we have sort of discussions with the consultants, and we will not get too angry? I think the point deduction system or a penalty system would be the best way forward, because they would suffer financial losses. Now, also, 11 members, will there be a noise control expert among the team? Because I'm very, very concerned about the impact of 3RS on Ma Wan residents. Will they get better? Would they be better off or worse off because of the 3RS? Under Secretary, I would like to explain. Well, you've got only 10 seconds. Please give a brief answer. Put simply, Chairman, the MTRCL is using government money in constructing XRL, but this time round, AAHK is using its own funds. So they would be doing a very proper job in monitoring the use of funds. And for the APCO of THB, is not we don't have any staff members as the Railway Development Office of Highways Department, but then this is a different model that we are adopting here. And also the M&V consultant, now how will they go about doing their work? We would take learn lessons from the XRL project, and we will help them to do the proper job in monitoring. Will there be a penalty system for them? I don't think we have gone to that stage yet. Will there be a noise control expert in your APCO? Mr. Chairman, I would like to explain that the Airport Expansion Project Coordination Office is not doing supervision of the works. I think the supervision work is still being undertaken by AAHK. The expert will the consultant will ensure that the works will meet with the requirements set out in the EIA report. But you still need a environmental expert. Well, the Undersecretary seems to be saying that if the AHK is using its own money, it will be more stringent. But if it's government money, you can adopt a more relaxed attitude. Well, he hasn't replied my question yet. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. This subcommittee provides a good opportunity for us to discuss issues which we don't understand. Well, looking back at the Kokkake's motion, it is mentioned that there is shortage of materials, manpower, and technical problems. I think these are issues where we can ask questions on here. Say, for example, if there is a patient who suffers from heavy illness, and then you would say that, well, we will not cure him because we don't have the medical technology. No, we would still cure him, try to cure him, or else he will die. Now, Undersecretary, I have some direct questions for you. We are all concerned about manpower shortage. How do you make sure that there is sufficient manpower? I'm sure that you will have to understand more from the engineering companies or the contractors. I also asked a question about sand, which is a major fill material for reclamation projects. Recently, worldwide, there has been a soaring demand for sand. Well, and it is being offered at market prices. So in this regard, how can we make sure that we have a sufficient supply of fill materials and that we are purchasing them at a reasonable cost level? And also, in relation to the reclamation method, I think we are now proposing a very environmentally friendly method. Well, will there be any problems? Because people like to have to seek judicial reviews, even if they don't understand the situation. I think you must explain clearly on all those issues so that there will not be any delays for the project.
Mr. Secretary, to answer the few questions, first of all, the third question, JR, it is already happening. Some of them are focused on the EIA report. Some are focused on the Executive Council's decision, and some on town planning. And we will carefully respond to each of the JR cases. This is a responsibility of the government in clearing some of the obstacles so that the project can proceed. And secondly, on labor, yes, indeed, the market is tight, and we're asking the AAHK to see whether there can be import of overseas labor or other solutions so that we can have more sufficient supply of labor. And we've asked them to consider this. From their angle, I'm sure they will be thinking about this as well. As for sea sand, Mr. Lam, the CE, had already answered that question. And again, there will have to be government-to-government communication. That is us together with the mainland governments. So apart from the AAHK, which has to do their part of the work, the government is also honoring our part of the work. And I've heard the concerns from the lecture members. We will be taking those up very carefully. And the costs and also the time for completion, these will be areas that we will focus on. Reclamation. Concerning reclamation, I think the AA had also explained very clearly as to their method of reclamation, how it would minimize impact to the environment, marine environment. And also in the environmental assessment reports, there will also be clear explanations. Three more, Chen Wei-yip, Kwok Ka-kay, and Michael Tian and Lee Chuk-yan. Four members have raised their hands to speak. Chan Kam-lam, you're asking the first round question, so you go first. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the third runway, it has to do with the future economic development of Hong Kong. We see the neighboring countries and areas in the region developing very rapidly their air transport. If Hong Kong stays in its present stage, in the next 8 to 10 years, the cargo and passenger transport as well as tourism and other industries will have to face very fierce competition. We have to run to stand still. This is something that's very real. The third runway is ready to commence, and it is a consensus more or less in Hong Kong society for the project to start as soon as possible. But there's always a group which question the third runway. And as with other major infrastructural projects such as the bridge, the Hong Kong Shenzhen Bridge, which had been subject to JR, resulting in delays and also more expenses in public money. So I hope Hong Kong, the LegCo, and also the people of Hong Kong have to be clear-minded to know that we have to develop for Hong Kong to be able to maintain its competitiveness. Otherwise, the results will be deplorable. I know that a colleague had raised a motion to shelve this proposal. We have voted on it, and it's been voted down. I know, Mr. Chair, even so. But this kind of intention to delay our infrastructure project, that's the intention. I think we will still have such views in the future. That is to say, to delay this project. There are other actions that we will meet with to delay in an attempt to delay the project. We have to be fully prepared. The government as well will have to be fully prepared if, unfortunately, if certain forces delay the progress of the project, then we will have to suffer even bigger loss. Does the government have any preparations for that? We already are looking at 5 to 6 JR cases on hand. If these continue to drag on, it will delay and also throw in confounding factors into the progress of our third runway project. So what is the government doing in order to make this process more smooth? Declaration of interest, Mr. Chair. I am an independent member of the AA. Mr. Chair, I agree to many of the points raised just now, including the concerns. And the people of Hong Kong are free to raise JR. And on the other hand, I also think that we should consider the greater good of Hong Kong. If there's anything that's unreasonable, whether they be hindrances or JRs, we will do our very best to respond accordingly and clear the way for the project. Yes, second round. Chen Wai-yip. Mr. Chair, perhaps the Secretariat can work together to do the following. And that is, 20 years ago, when we were building the Chek Lap Kok International Airport, what were the reports, the names, and the areas of study at the time? If that can be listed out for our information, so that we can, as a committee in the future, follow those areas for our monitoring work. This will help with our work, and also it will help the people of Hong Kong. Will you do that, Mr. Chair? I'll ask the Secretariat to look into it. Wakake. Mr. Chair, yes, some technical issues and labor issues and also sea sand and material issues. I hope there will be papers submitted to us after the meeting for our further information. Now, Mr. Chair, in the next meeting, we'll be talking about finances, and we've talked about that today as well. Can the government and the AA give us more information to see how they are able to complete the project within the cost budgeted? if you want the LegCo to believe you, this kind of very rough papers that you have prepared for us at this meeting is not acceptable. And it's not acceptable to us and to the public. You have to have more refined figures. Michael Tian. Mr. Chair, I have but 1 minute. I will not have a Q&A, but I will set out the conditions as follows. First of all, you listed out A, B, C, and D concerning the consultants. We'll add an item E, and that is for the Ma Wan residents, noise pollution after the commencement of the third runway, it will not be worse off than what it is today. Now, perhaps you definitely the Ma Wan residents are not happy with their noise level today. And secondly, get a scoring card, a marks deduction model. That is to say, for item E, if all the assessments are fine, then you pay the 90 million. Otherwise, if there's any shortfall, you deduct the fee until it goes down to 0 if necessary. Mr. Lee, Chuck Yan. Mr. Chair, concerning sea sand, I think sea sand is market price. What is it about government-to-government negotiations? That's what I heard just now with the mainland governments. Of course, quarrying, you may have to negotiate about quarrying, but sea sand, I think it has not been rising in price, actually, or river sand. I think sea sand is an area that may be the reason for cost overrun for the entire project. I would want to know what you're going to negotiate with the mainland governments with. Mr. Chair, because we know we need a lot of sea sand, and in the neighboring seas of Hong Kong, basically the main area from where we can get the sea sand is from the mainland. But we, of course, do not rule out further off areas. And that's why we want to ascertain a stable source of sea sand. 5th of January, 8:30 to 10:30 will be our next meeting. And we'll be discussing finances. Would you please provide us with early information so that members will have sufficient time to study them before the meeting? Thank you for coming to the meeting today. Thank you.